Good morning, everyone. My name is Don Nelson, and I'll be your instructor today. And what we're going to be covering is a continuation of Carpenter's Helper. The task is fixed blade razor knives. We're going to go over safety and use. The objective here, no different fixed blade knives, and be able to inspect and replace the blades in each. You want to know the different blade orientation of the knife while cutting straight and curved cuts, and proper hand and leg position while applying pressure on steel framing square, and straight edge while cutting, but they should be inspected prior to use for any damage to the cutting guide edge. The time on the project, each class is different, but usually it takes about an hour to an hour and a half on average. All right, but time isn't critical here. All right, safety is. Everyone should be comfortable and confident with the tool, and that is our goal here today, gentlemen. And our area that we're going to be practicing these skills is going to be in our shop area. Any questions? Okay, the tools and equipment required are the ones demonstrated here today. And these same tools will be in your workstation in the work area. All right, and they consist of cut-resistant gloves, fixed blade utility knife, a fixed blade carpet knife. We have steel straight edge, and also a steel framing square. Another thing that we're going to cover we're going to go over a little bit on, is going to be the use of a sharpening stone on a utility blade. The reference material, I have the handouts that are sitting in front of you today, which is also same reference in our basic skills handbook number 1. All right, you can follow along with everything I'm doing up here with your handout. Okay, the knives used in floor covering trade are about 98% replaceable blade razor knives. They're extremely sharp and must be used in a safe manner to avoid serious injury. Injuries from these knives usually end up with a trip to the hospital and stitches. To avoid these types of injuries, it is essential to use them with extreme caution. Using these knives correctly and safely is a must, and you must practice safe handling techniques every time they have one in your hand. Developing good habits in the beginning will instill good safety practices throughout your career. If these tools are not handled with respect, serious injury can and will happen. Our performance objective, all right, what we're looking for, is you must demonstrate to us 100% confidence with all safety techniques while using fixed blade knives when changing the blades and cutting straight and curved lines with and without a guide, without a straight edge. And what we need from you today is we need you to pay attention to the demonstration. Safety is a key issue here at the school. All right. We're going to need to make sure that we follow all the safety practices that I put before you today. All right. When you want to wear your cut-resistant gloves at all times before handling any of the knives. We're going to demonstrate also the proper hand and leg position for applying pressure on a steel framing square and a straight edge to hold it into position while you're using it for cutting straight cuts. And then we're going to cover why, when, and how to use a sharpening stone on a utility blade. You will be evaluated, all right, by the instructors. They're going to monitor you while you use these tools. All right, when you're blade changing and using them for cutting, All right, we'll be watching your cutting techniques while making freehand cuts with a straight edge, with a steel square, and you will be graded accordingly. Each apprentice must be 100% proficient with the safe handling of all knives. Safety is the key word here, gentlemen. Before using any of the knives at the school, you have to put on your cut-resistant gloves. They will be issued to you in the school, and they are a must. If you get on the job, some jobs require you to wear the cut-resistant gloves, and if the safety officer catches you without these gloves on, they could write you up. If you get writ up too many times, you could be thrown off the job. Now, these gloves are cut resistant, not cut proof. They are to help you to avoid cuts. We had an apprentice test the theory on how good cut resistant is, and he took his blade and ran it across the palm of his hand, and he ended up with a pretty bad cut, and we had to send him to the hospital. Don't do anything silly. Cut resistant is not cut proof. Cut proof means you're not going to get cut. Cut resistant means it's going to help you to not get cut. So before doing anything with these knives, you want to put your safety gear on, which are your gloves. Cut-resistant gloves are made of a synthetic material, and they are not flame resistant. If you get them around an open flame, like when we're using a torch to heat up our material to cut, you could melt these onto your hand. So you want to make sure you do not have these on when you have your torch in your hand. You're heating up any tile or any material. All right? Make sure that you take them off. Kind of seems like these would be more of a pain than anything else because you're taking them on and off, but they're a requirement. You have to use them here. With our gloves on, we can go ahead and change our blade. This knife here is ergonomically correct. It's got a slight bend to it, makes it a little bit better position for cutting. Also, it has a flared tail. So if your hands are sweating, the flare in the back will keep this knife from sliding out of your hand. Not so with this carpet knife. Most of the knives that we use out in the field, they have a screw on them that it could be unscrewed and screwed or taken apart and tightened back up with just your hand. You don't have to have a screwdriver with them, and these are the more preferred tools to have on the job. They're faster and it's less things to carry around, like a screwdriver. To open the knife, you want to unscrew the handle, and this one's on a hinge. You lift this up. When you grab the blade, you want to do so from the dull end. On a utility blade, there's one sharp edge and one dull edge. Grab it from the dull edge, and you can turn your blade over and stick it back into your blade, into your handle of your knife. When you have it opened, you want to check out, there's a little tab inside the handle that keys into the notches in the blade. Make sure that that tab is not worn out. If it is, you want to replace the knife. Also, this knife has a magnet down in the base here, so when you put your blade in, it holds it in place so it doesn't fall out while you're tightening it back up. When you tighten up any of these knives, they all have aluminum bodies on them. Over tightening them could cause you to strip out the threads in the knife, which would hinder them useless, okay? Be sure you don't over tighten them, just finger tight only. To check to see if the knife is in good working order, if you grab the blunt edge of the utility knife and move it up and down, if there's any play in it, that is an indication of wear, and you want to replace the knife handle. On the carpet knife, this blade is not like the utility knife, not only in shape, but also this does not have a dull edge or top or bottom. Both top and bottom are sharp, and you want to be aware of that at all times. This knife, some knives have a thumb guard in the front here, which is a very good idea, so your thumb doesn't slide down over top of that sharp edge and cut your thumb. This one doesn't have it. This one is very popular in the field. Just be aware that the top edge of these blades are very sharp. This knife also has a screw on it that has a little wing that flips up. You can unscrew this. This one you do not need to take completely apart. You just slide them open. To take out the blade on these, you want to grab it by the flat end of the blade, all right? And you could change the blade that way. This is a slotted carpet blade. It has a slot indication in here, a little bar that kind of sticks out that the blade hooks onto. You want to secure that blade on that bar, make sure that it's engaged, and again, hand tighten the knife. To check this is the same way. If you move the blade up and down, if it's tight in the knife, then it's good. If there's play, you want to replace the handle. Blade design has something to do with the cuts that you're making. A big blade like this utility knife, and when I hold my knife handle in close proximity to the floor, the material that I'm cutting, by having this very low attitude like this, puts more of this blade in my material as I cut, and the more blade that I have in the material aids in cutting straight. It's like a rudder on a boat. If I need to make an intricate cut by standing the blade up or getting the handle more up and down position, when I cut this way, I just have the point in the cut, and it makes it a lot easier, and it makes a better cut by standing it up to make intricate cuts. It's sort of on the same principle as a coping saw blade, which is very narrow and thin to make intricate cuts, as opposed to a cross-cut handsaw that has a big wide blade. So when you're cutting with the big wide blade, the blade helps you to track straight. Same principle. All right, straight edges and steel squares. We use them as cutting guides. Before I use one as a cutting guide, I want to inspect the edge. If there's any nicks or damage to the cutting edge that I'm going to follow, I want to replace that edge. If there is a little damage to the edge of my square or my straight edge, the chances of my blade jumping up on top of the straight edge, sliding across the top of that, could end up with an injury. I can end up sticking the knife in my leg. So you want to be, inspect that edge before you use it. Both. Now, the straight edge, widely used out in the field. They're a very good edge to use, but not the safest edge to use. The reason for that being, when I apply pressure on my straight edge, I have to apply pressure in 2 points. Up at the top where I'm going to start my blade, and my leg would be down at the end here, holding the back of the straight edge in place, so when I make my cut. When I cut, I only want to go from about 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I don't want to go past that 90 degrees, because when I come past, I start coming out of my material, and it would be a lot easier for the knife to come out and stick in my leg. That's the reason why my preferred and our preferred straight edge to use, though not that long, this is the safest edge to use. It's only 2 foot, but when I put the pressure at the top of the edge where I start my blade, I can put my knee pressure on the tongue of the square. Remember, this is the body, this is the tongue. I can put my knee on the tongue of this square out to the side over here to lock that in place. And now